If you look at the budget documents from 14 all the way up till now, they use the word startup at least 20 times. My curiosity and my love for life is what's kept me alive and in journalism. And you need to have an alternative to Twitter. And they sent a message back saying they may not feel that Shark Tank is the right fit for India.
Welcome back, Bio family. This is episode 2 of our podcast series, and for this one, we have Vishal Krishna. He is a senior business journalist with over 18 years of experience in this industry. He started his career with the New Indian Express, then went on to join Business World and then YourStory. He worked closely with the leadership team at YourStory to grow the media company. The conversation we had revolves around the various startups he's been close with the likes of Zoho and Co, even before what we know them today as. He shares his experience working in the media industry with a look into how big enterprises fund media companies to run their narratives and how government and businesses influence each other. Vishal now runs his own media company called Upstream Life, where he's capturing India's transformation in business, technology, and science. So I really hope that you enjoy this podcast. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more such content. Let's just jump into it. So for the viewers that are watching, we have Vishal Krishna here. He has about 18 to 20 years of experience in the business world. He's been covering the business world extensively before the whole idea of unicorns existed, startups existed. Yes?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to give you a story there. And obviously back then, I'd been to America only once before 2010 and nobody knew what a unicorn is from India. And suddenly, you start hearing about unicorns in the Indian press around 2012, 13, right? We had our first unicorn, which was InMobi, and then we had Mu Sigma at the time, around 11. Suddenly in 12, the press started writing about unicorns. And I had this whole concept of saying, why can't there be Garudas? Why can't they use Indian mythology? Okay, I was so naive. But then obviously it is true because we like following whatever goes on in Silicon Valley. And therefore the word unicorns was so popular, henceforth. And you've seen India has more than 100 unicorns now.
Correct.
But it's just another word for me. It doesn't mean anything. Really doesn't mean anything.
I think we are just moving on from unicorns to decacons at this point.
Yeah, there's one decacon and you see how they're suffering. It's in the ed tech space. That's all I could say. And you're going to ask me some questions around that. I know.
I have a lot of questions for you.
Yeah.
First of all, I want to know one thing.
Go for it.
Let me go back to around 2012, 2013. I think you started working at YourStory around that time?
Yeah, 15.
15, is it?
15.
And before that, you said 2012 is when you were covering the story of Zoho and...
2009, 10.
9, 10, right?
Yeah.
And that time, Zoho was, it was building up at that point.
Oh, I have a story of Zoho too. Did you know Zoho was actually, the name Zoho, after the 2001 crash, a lot of the dot-com companies just went down. So the name Zoho was available to this company called AdventNet. That's the one that Sridhar Vembu had founded. And he purchased this .com. It was bankrupt, of course. They brought in the domain name. And I think that Zoho was apparently in some kind of e-commerce or retail business or something. And the rest is history. It became a SaaS business. A lot of small businesses use that product, of course, for billing and sort of invoicing and whatnot, CRM and whatnot. But you were right. I started covering them then, 2009, 10. And the way, Sridhar is a different personality. We could talk more about him later. But yes, I've covered most of these unicorns then, like Freshworks. Put them on the cover of a large business magazine back then in 2010. They were in a small studio like this, in Chennai. And, discovering Girish and his team was the best thing that happened to me. So yes, I did cover a lot of the unicorns around 2009, 10. And the rest, India has just gone off in another planet, another orbit. Who would have thought, these 100 plus unicorns would exist with all of us young people going there, going out to the globe and saying that India has arrived. In fact, you won't believe it. When I traveled to the US in the previous decade, not the previous decade, but the one before that, and there were a lot of questions asked in immigration. But after 2010 or 14, let's say 14 is seminal. After 14, I visited the United States 17 times. No questions asked. They said, what would you do? I'm a startup from India. I write about startups. I consult with startups. Open doors. That's how India changed, man.
You said 2014. 2014, a significant thing happened in India.
Yes.
Modi government came in.
And you wouldn't believe it. Even the Congress government, the previous, in 13, there was a budget. And they'd used the word startup I think only once.
Okay.
If you look at the budget documents from 14 all the way up till now, they use the word startup at least 20 times in the budget's coming up on Feb 1st. And I'm not joking. They may use the startup word as many times as possible. That's the change, from in a speech that lasts 2 hours. The word startup was never mentioned till 2012. From 13, it starts gaining precedence. And now they use it at least 20 times in the budget documents. You can just go search it up, download a document, just search the document and just say the word startup or Digital India everywhere.
I mean, come on. At this point, we have a reality TV show around startups. So, I mean, what can you say? Right? Something that is supposed to be objective. You're mixing emotions into it in a really Indianized style.
Yeah, especially Hindi. Only Hindi. Right?
But I'll get to that. But before that, I want to talk more about Zoho, because there are 108, 109 unicorns at this point, correct?
I lost count. I've lost count. I don't want to keep count anymore.
And all of these big names that you talk about, right? You talk about Paytm, you talk about Nykaa, etc., Zomato, right? All of them, there's some or the other drama every time going on, right? Either the founder messed up, either the company did something, this, that, right? Always in the news. Zoho is one company that is so big, but they're rooted to their to the ground, right? And there is no drama, and everyone has something or the other positive thing to talk about it, right? And they're still so successful. How does it work? What is it about Zoho that sets them so apart from other companies?
And they have the lowest attrition rate.
Yeah.
That's
correct.
Another thing to boot, right?
Correct.
That question that you asked me, how do you build such a company? I mean, you shouldn't forget that another gentleman I have a lot of respect for is Nitin Kamath.
Zerodha, yes.
right? Similar, right? Similar vein.
No drama, nothing.
Yeah, a couple of months ago, I think Sridhar interviewed Nitin at the Ritz-Carlton in Bangalore, and there was something wonderful going on there. Okay, how did Sridhar manage it, if that's the question? See, firstly, I think from what I'll give you an example of Sridhar, and I want to share this example with people out there. And I know why Sridhar is the way he is, and he's been very kind to me. So I met him in Pleasanton. The first time I met him in Pleasanton was around 2017. I always met him in India, but not abroad. So I met him in Pleasanton. That's where the Zoho office is. I'll tell you why it's significant for a man with a lot of heart. I'll tell you, he's a man with a lot of heart. So finished the interview. We just then started talking personal stuff, whatever it was. He gave me some advice, and I took that advice. And then I suddenly realized that I had to be in San Francisco for another meeting at 1 p.m. I still remember the time. It was already 11:45, and I had to reach San Francisco from Pleasanton by 1 o'clock.
And what is the time?
It'll take you 1.5 hours to get there, and I had no idea at the time. And I told Sridhar, I'm going to take a Uber. And he said, are you mad? You take a Uber. What's the rate on the Uber? I said, $140. Okay. He said, okay, fine. What's the time that you're going to get there? Yeah, I said, it says 90 minutes. He said, you're never going to make it on time. And the guy I was meeting next was one of the advisors at Nike. And I didn't want to miss out on that meeting. Very important for me. He said, look, I've got a solution for me. Just get onto my car. Okay. I was standing at the drive-by, and I thought he's going to come in one of his fancy cars, but he's come in a Toyota Camry. That's Sridhar for you, okay? It's about frugality. It serves, Camry serves the purpose.
Correct.
Here's a guy who the press is saying unicorn, that this drives a Camry. And comes by, picks me up. I said, okay. Takes me to the train station and says, why don't you go pick your ticket? Just got myself a ticket. He said, what's the estimated time of arrival? I said, 12:45 or 12:55. He said, there you have it. Then he said, most significant thing that he told me, and I will always carry it into my startup at the Upstream Life, is this. The cost of the Uber was $140. The cost of going to San Francisco was only $20.
Wow.
And he said, there you go. You have $100 left. Go buy something for your wife. Or save that for something else.
How nice.
That's how you build great businesses. You're not being lavish on things that, you don't need, man. You don't have to be like that. You build a business. Everything else is peripheral. It's narrative, right? And obviously now people watching this can say that, Sridhar also has some narrative going on. Of course he's entitled for a narrative. All of us are doing some narrative or the other. In fact, the whole world is narrative. But Sridhar's principles of frugality are what has made him a big man today.
Amazing.
And so that's rubbed off on me in many ways. And Yeah, let's see how it goes.
That's very, very interesting, because when you talk about the startup world, when you look at the startup world, it's very glamorized, right? Like at this point, I would like compare it to like a Bollywood, right? Where things that people see outside is not the same that they see inside, right?
Absolutely.
And I've interacted with a lot of these founders. Some of them are like, really cocky and live a very lavish lifestyle when their company is running in like crores and crores of losses, right?
Yeah.
And it's something that is very, very important for entrepreneurs to realize, that it's not all about glamour.
It's a question that I want to add to this point. In the old days, my dad was a businessman, and obviously we were contract manufacturing for United Spirits and Shaw Wallace at the time. And whatever happened to Vijay Mallya and his lifestyle. And is it wrong to be like that? I would rather say that when you build your business, you can be as lavish as you want, but you also have a fiduciary responsibility towards your other stakeholders. I think you should not be carried away with being lavish and forget everything else, which is sometimes, with that we've seen so much wealth over the last 8 years, and you're right, we see a lot of lavishness set in. But I used to be opinionated on that one. Okay, now I'm obviously going to give you
Opinionated?
I'm barely opinionated now, because I'll tell you what, I'm not part of the system, as to say, but I would rather say it depends on the individual. And most of those startups who make it big, they have to realize that, this is a cliche, right? Money isn't everything. It's easy to say that, but it's also easy to get carried away with money. So my opinion is this, that if you're building a business, build a business, not a narrative around it with your lifestyle. It really doesn't matter. It really doesn't. In the end of the day, you've seen a Decacon getting written off by a lot of people in the press, and rightly so. A lot of good people are writing about this Decacon because they were a sustainable business when they started, but now
Which is
not
this company
anymore.
you're talking about?
I can tell you it's an edtech company, but I don't want to name it. You can name whatever you want. Because I know the founders. I think they're wonderful founders, but yeah, they're a Decacon now, and a lot of narrative took over, and that's it. It's
You know
it's
what?
going
I'm not
down,
going to
down.
name it. Let's see if the people viewing it can guess.
Yeah, they
it.
should name it. I'm not going to name them though, because although I don't want to get barely legal, or I don't want to have some kind of lawsuit thrown on me. And it's easy in India. I've had lawsuits in the past.
Oh, really?
It just gets
For what?
thrown. I'll tell you that separately. But you get you get threatened anyway by anybody, right? And it's so easy for them to do it and throw money on it, right? And
Yeah, they have to spare some change on
yeah.
it, and
my previous organization, I remember that we got threatened with a plagiarism case from one of India's largest dailies. Okay, and again, I'm not going to name, and the fact that it took us going to Narendra Modi and getting recognized by Narendra Modi, that stopped people from even threatening us after that.
This is you at YourStory.
I was at YourStory. So I think YourStory was a wonderful place. We were the ones who shook up a lot of these dailies, man. I swear on God. That was one hell of a stint. I think I respect a lot of what Shraddha has done. In fact, a lot of what she has rubbed off on me too. Again, that's another person that you have to realize that she's not very lavish at all. To your question, she is building a sustainable media business. It's not easy to build a media business, and she's managed to do so. And my opinion doesn't matter because she's highly opinionated herself, right? She's fine out there. And but again, coming back to your original question, between lavishness and building a business, and having these narratives of unicorn, decacon doesn't really matter. You just have to see, in the end of the day, as a reporter yourself, you are building this business, whether these companies will be able to generate cash. And some of my friends out there from the Morning Context and the Ken, they've been asking a lot of tough questions, and then people call me and say that, how can you journalists be so negative? But if some of them are not asking questions, it's, you know what I'm saying?
I get what
We're
you
living
mean.
in a very sterile world, and it's not very, very educative, is it?
I get what you mean. Let's pause that for now. So I want to go back a little bit and talk about your start of your journey, right? You started in the media space around 2004, and did you directly jump into the business world? Cover in the business world?
Mine was a complete offbeat case. I never wanted to be a journalist. I, in fact, still think I'm not a journalist. Journalism happened to me by chance. I have a lot of respect for one of my early mentors. It's Kishore Buddha, who's an ex-Indian Express editor. I met him in England. All I wanted to do was go be part of the liquor business that my dad had at the time. And little did I know that I was sinking down and going bankrupt. So my journey towards journalism was, I was already blogging. I mean, even before blogs became blogs, I was already, if you look at the early Amazon website, I used to do CD reviews. I used to do music reviews. I used to do political reviews just as a hobby. And I used to get paid, 100 rupees a month for it back in 1998. I'd get checks home, small checks from these these were these internet service providers who would have this, if you go to their website and leave reviews, right, and if they liked it, they'd send you checks. So
Could you give an equivalent of what 100 rupees is like at that time would be compared to now?
for me, it didn't really matter, actually, to be honest, because my dad was a wealthy man.
Okay.
And it was only the bankruptcy that made me think otherwise. But to be honest with you, 100 rupees was a lot of money back then. You could buy a Pink Floyd tape. You could buy a Pink Floyd tape and listen to it for another 6 months before you save 100 rupees. That was the state of affairs in India. A lot of people didn't have money.
Yeah.
And it's rightly so. I mean, the lunch money for most of them back then was 4 rupees or 5 rupees.
Correct.
And with that, you get 3 rupees, you'd get a vegetable biryani. 1.5 rupees, you get a coffee. And you save 50 paisa. That was the sort of life that people used to lead in India, especially in colleges. I'm sorry. This is what happened in colleges, and I knew a lot of them in St. Joseph's, and I'm from Bangalore, so I'm talking about my subjective experience. So people in MES, people in St. Joseph's would have this kind of lifestyle. But yeah, coming down to that question on journalism, right? My dad's bankruptcy forced me to think that I have to look for a new career, new alternate life, because I went from being, you could say, the unicorn to zero, right? I mean, that was quite a lifestyle change for me. Completely threw me off balance. And when it threw me off balance, I had to rediscover myself because my dad was like a god for me. And after that, it was very difficult to get in touch with him because he was living in South Africa at the time, and he had to have time off for himself. So meeting Kishore Buddha, one of my colleagues at one of my contemporary students at University of Leeds, but he was 10 years my senior. He was already editor of Indian Express, had taken a break. Currently now he runs his own record company called Coolie Records. We'll get into that if you want later. He's a musician, he's a blues musician, and a design consultant, a consummate professional, somebody who can connect history and technology and design very well. He told me that, look, you sort of write well, so why don't you give a try at journalism? And I said, okay, let me give it a try. And I remember him shooting off this mail to the local papers and saying, I have this guy who's really keen. He's got a bundle of energy. Just take him in. I have the same energy as that point of time today. And it's all because I want, and journalism has given me everything. What I couldn't gather from business, it's given me, enough time to travel. It's given me enough time to think. It's given me a lot of time to be around people who are fantastic, phenomenal, especially the first 8 years working with those people in business world. Rohit, fantastic set of people. Back then, you're talking about intellectual stories. And I know if people from the morning context, especially Ashish Mishra, who writes those stories even today, we wrote some wonderful stories.
Interesting.
I did automotive, retail, covered insurance, and I covered the intersection of consumers and tech and how tech influenced business. It was a different world altogether.
This is around what time?
Around 4 to 14.
And internet was just coming up.
India didn't have smartphones all the way up till 12. It was only after 12 or 13 that massively India changed again, right? Everything changed after 14. Going into Express in 2004, the New Indian Express in 2004, and covering sort of politics, some local politics. Then I had a own column called Career Opportunities, a decent column. The only reason they put me there is because they wanted, Indian Express was never good with corporate, so they wanted somebody savvy to talk to corporate, and maybe that could result in advertising dollars at the time. From there to going to business world, working with some of the best people. You talk about guys like Niranjan, Raja, Daksha, Manas Chakravarti, Shrikant Srinivas, Prasenjit Datta, Rajiv Dubey, and the rest of them. And you're sitting among people who would think, and some of them are still around today. And I think I would rather ask young people to read their stories because they molded so much of my life and lifestyle and reading. The kind of books and the knowledge that were around. I think we've lost some of that now. Because it's a lot of Instagram.
All the books
now,
are being
right?
converted into reels right now.
Yeah, it's all reels. Did you know, Rohit? I have to talk about reels a little bit, okay? Because I'm local from Bangalore, and in the 80s and 70s, and I played a lot of sports. So and whenever you'd say something, whenever you'd bullshit in India or in Bangalore, pardon again, Bangalore, they would say things like, "Hey, on reel bidta idane." Basically, he's a bullshitter. So reel in Kannada was bullshitting.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm not joking. You can ask around. Ask any local guy, Kannada guy out there. He'll say, "Hey, on reel bidta idane maga."
Reel means bullshit in
Bullshit.
Kannada. Wow.
So yeah,
I mean that's fitting then. That's fitting.
absolutely. So that's why I got into journalism around 4 because I had enough of my own bullshit going on in personal life, and journalism really changed me.
Okay, so
Made me a different personality, changed my true nature completely.
So, okay, now my question here is the first guest that we got on, right, Akash, he got into journalism also because of certain events. Like he wasn't keen on he wasn't pushing to become a journalist, right?
Yeah.
And even in your case, you weren't like
Yeah, I wasn't
striving-
trained.
You
I
weren't
trained with people.
exactly, right? Is that a common thing?
Unfortunately, it's not anymore. And I have my opinions. I think journalists who come from other professions and other walks of life make far better journalists. I have nothing against all you graduates from journalism schools, but I think journalism schools are a joke. It is because you don't need specialization in journalism. You need people with life experience. In the early business world that I worked in, a lot of people came from the banking community. Or a lot of people were career journalists, people who just started off without any journalism background. They came from BSc statistics, BSc mathematics.
But
Some of
that-
them came from IIMs. Some of them were chartered accountants.
But that gives them that credibility in terms of the industry, right? Like for example, you did your MBA.
I did my MA in International Communications,
Right.
which basically is a combination of finance and political science.
Correct. So it gives you an understanding of that sector itself, and that basically makes you a better journalist because you already have an insight of the industry, right? Does that make sense?
I'll tell you how it made sense to you. I'm not disagreeing with you. You need to have a background when you come to journalism. You need to have a certain worldview. It need not be a subjective worldview. You need to have, when I say worldview, it is a worldview that's open-minded. Open-mindedness, a little ability to learn, curiosity, and you love writing is what makes you a good journalist. And you want to discover stories. It's all about storytelling, right? You need to discover, and networks. Journalism is about networks. So if you have that network, and you already worked in that network, you'd make a great, fantastic journalist. You need not be a great writer because there are people who edit your stories. In my case, I was a bit of everything.
Got it.
Right? I could write, but I was not a great writer. At least I think I'm a good writer now, but I don't know. So I'm writing, in fact. Then there were times when I didn't have the network. We've discussed this in the past. I always thought I'd never have a network. I do have the network now,
Right.
which is amazing, right? And finally, my curiosity and my love for life is what's kept me alive and in journalism. And like I said, I only left journalism in these 20 years only for, say, 6 months, 9 months, give or take 9 months. I'm back at it. I can't live away from it. Now I'm an entrepreneur by myself. But once a journalist, I think you're always going to think, you're going to have that curiosity for life. You're always going to be anti-establishment for a while. But when you run a business, you can't be anti-establishment also.
That's one of my things with journalists, right? Now, when people that are trained to be a journalist come and start writing stuff, they take it I feel like they take it in a very idealistic sense of things, right?
Superb. Great point. You're right.
And whether it's politics or it's business, right? They when they write from their point of view, it becomes very idealistic, and just the whole idea of the information gets corrupted.
Some people will take offense to you.
I'm
but,
sure.
And that'll be good if you think if that's. But yes, you're right. A lot of people come in. The question should be, did I come with ideals? I did. I came from Leeds, which is supposed to be a school, which is a socialist school. I think ideals are good, but you need to also have grounded reality, and the grounded reality is the knowledge that you have of subjects. But we are very subjective. Journalists don't have the time. Gore Vidal made a great quote, Vidal, the author. He made a famous quote. Okay, I mean, he said, if you want to tell the truth, you got to be a writer. If you want to lie, you have to be a journalist. Seriously, I've come to believe in it nowadays. It's because it's half truths maybe. I mean, because of timelines, deadlines, pressure of the organization. I think you're absolutely right. That form of idealism, you should not be carried away. Again, in my school, they thought, don't get carried away by your own propaganda. And sometimes journalists do.
Correct. And if this part makes it into the podcast, I feel like we have
should.
a lot of journalists that are...
Let it make it in the podcast. What stops you? I mean, I think we are living in a free society. Are we a free society or not?
No, we're not.
Why?
We don't have free speech.
I have not had trouble. I've said a lot of stuff anyway. I haven't gotten into trouble. But I've had people take me to court for certain times, but that's not trouble. You can say whatever you want, man. I think you should not edit this out. I'm putting it out there.
Got it. Okay, done. Last question around journalists. If, like, for a journalist who's a fresher, who's just trying to get into the industry, how much do journalists make right now?
They don't make money. No, seriously, I think for a country of this size, I can't believe they don't pay their journalists well. Seriously, it's...
Free news is not appreciated. Like, you need to sell
the
out
models
to be
have
able
changed.
to...
The business model has changed, obviously. Free news is not appreciated, but there was a world of subscription that made up for that. I think my friends at the Morning Context and the Ken have done very well, right? I'll tell you what, in my 20-odd years, people have protected me, and I've fought with editors. I've had people who protect me, and I've been very lucky. In fact, Shraddha protected me. Shraddha has protected me a lot. In fact, the old editors, Prasenjit, Rajiv, Shrikant protected me a lot. I can tell you, we wrote something on Toyota in 2008 in Business World, and something about them, market share being wrong, the brands and models being wrong. What was being released in India were not good. And Toyota did not like that story one bit because they'd given us full access. And they were advertisers to the magazine that I worked for. They pulled out their advertising. And did it really matter? No. I mean, everybody was fully behind me.
Got it.
Everybody was fully behind me. And I'm sure all the journalists there have some stories there. And in fact, we ran a stories on Jet Airways about Jet Airways and its debt back in 2007. And Jet Airways, which is now defunct, pulled out advertising. It really didn't matter. So there are people. I mean, it all depends on the editor of the day. It depends on the owners. Can that be misused? It can be misused by the publication and the corporate too. The corporate can influence journalists, and journalists can use it to blackmail too. That can also happen. All scenarios are possible. I've been on the right side all the time. Thanks to the people that I worked with, they were fantastic. Right. So we were lucky. We were lucky. But yes, of course, your point is very true. What is a sellout? It's an open canvas. But like I told you, if you're taking my money and saying what I want you to say, that perhaps is being a sellout.
Got it. Okay.
By the way, did we script today? Did we script anything today?
No. This man was just like, please ask whatever you want. I will answer however you want me to, or however I want to.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. In all fairness, that's how it works, right?
Yeah.
But nobody respects that anymore. But you've also researched stuff, which is what your advice was for the young journalists. And the question was, do they make enough money, right?
Exactly.
They don't make enough money. And organizations should take care of them, provided the business model is good, number one. So journalists have to see where their career progression would be. You might want to start off with a place that pays you less, and then you end up in a place that can really pay you for your knowledge. That means they also have to prepare themselves to read. They have to go network. They have to have some sort of primal need to say that I'm the top dog here, That's what builds good journalists. But yes, anybody can be corrupted. I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to have anything with that anymore. And that's why I said I've had enough of that lifestyle. And, I wanted to be free and lead a life the way I want to. I want to tell some good stories. I will. I want to do the business the way I want to do. And hence I left. Okay.
Nice. Okay.
But yes, journalists need to have that. Again, curiosity, read a lot, prepare for networks, be an open book. But don't be stupid, don't be naive, because I was all of that. And, because it's a dog-eat-dog world. It is.
Correct.
And in journalism, so all of them want to go on page one, have that next best-selling story. And in this world of likes, shares, and people come and say, hey, great story, that's become a bit too much. And they should be aware of that. They should be careful that every day is a new day. You just have to keep moving on. You can't You can't stick to your laurels anymore.
And as much as people might think that it's a democratic world, it's not. It's a capitalist world. What are your thoughts on that?
Democratic world, democratic world, and I mean, I'll tell you what, Rohit. I want to be honest with you on this part of it. Okay, on the politics part of it, democracy is a myth, man. It's really a myth. I would recommend people to read Carl Schmitt's Carl Schmitt's book. It's called The Concept of the Political. I'd rather ask them to read that, because fundamentally, today I think the democracy in any part of the world. You go to America, I feel it's like run by the rich. I feel like
Even in India.
In India, it's different. It is. I wouldn't say it's run by the rich. It's more. You can say it's a combination of patronage, clientelism, and oligarchy. It's a combination of the three. So
you
we
have
are
said three complicated words. Could you please break it down for the
so
audience?
oligarchy, rule of the rich. Patronage, where a few powerful families and political families will only be patrons to a certain set of people and certain clans, certain castes, certain religions, and take them forward. And so it's patronage, and there's clientelism. So clientelism is about doling out favors to certain pressure groups or peer groups, and making sure that they take over the bureaucracy. So India has been a mix. So you have to realize India is only 70 years old in terms of its independence, right? It's going through a political evolution, which many countries, like Britain and America, outgrew that and had transparent ecosystem, at least for the citizens, around the 1880s onwards. Okay, so Britain with its Westminster ecosystem. There's a lot of history and reading for you, ladies and gentlemen. So Britain with its Westminster ecosystem, and a monarchy that doesn't really have any power, but it's parliamentary. And the Westminster system allows you to take decisions faster.
Got it.
Okay, and America, on the other hand, the power rests with the president and the Congress, another different political institution. But all of them agreed. America also moved towards some form of fast, rapid decision making. But recommended reading here is important. Please read The Origins of Political Order by Francis Fukuyama in 2 volumes. The first one is The Origins of Political Order. The second one is Political Order and Political Decay, which talks about political evolution, how governments form, how states are created, and how individuals and biology are leading us to one form of political evolution from one to another. So is India really, is that the question, right? India is a good democracy, actually. To come to think of it, people voted the party, correct? It was a democracy, right? We voted and the majority wins, and we have first past the post.
You have been in this business world for 20 years. You have covered business world for 20 years.
Yeah.
Correct? You understand how things run, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
As far as data goes, the gap between the poor and the rich has only increased, right? In the last 2 to 3 decades majorly. Right, that gap that is increasing. Of course, the government is doing a lot to support the poor as well, right? But again, India is a country that is majorly filled with poor. Now, when such a situation arises, how can you say that it's? I mean,
It's democratic.
It's not democratic, but how can you say that it's not being run by the rich, not being controlled by the rich?
So if your question is to give the power back to the people, that's a very university and school kind of debate, which all of us go through, that evolution.
Correct.
So our evolution goes through like that. But we'd have to look at it from the holistic picture of economics, of political evolution, like I said, political order. Okay, let's take a few steps back. Where is India today? I mean, I told you, we are only 70 years in terms of political evolution. Economically, we are only 30 years into liberalization.
We'll get into economics as well.
So I want to bring in this. I have a couple of things to say to you on how things have changed over the last 30 years. I have seen more people eat out of garbage in San Francisco than in Bangalore. That tells me that India is changing. I don't see a man or woman eating out of garbage. You are looking at a country with a population of 1.3 billion, and God knows what it's going to get to, with a small landmass.
Correct.
America is such a huge landmass.
Correct.
Huge. Phenomenally big, and then you have only 250 million people. The distribution of India in terms of data is so different. You have all sorts going on here. So with all that, we've done very well democratically. We have got good institutions from the village level all the way now. But talking generally about, you have to realize that we were ruled by a foreign country till 1947. A lot of the resources were taken away. If you looked at 1750s, our GDP was about quarter of the world.
Right.
And China also similar numbers.
Right.
that changed overnight after 1750. It changed so fast that today what we do only 3% or something, right, of the world's GDP. Right? If that has to change, lot of things have to change along with it, right? If you look at the new middle class that's happened, yes, incomes shrunk during COVID, but things are coming back. And I just recently read a report. If you pull out report from pension funds, I mean not pension funds, but pension schemes run by the government, EPFs and all that, it's actually increased. You see more people participating in the formal economy than ever before. It's phenomenal. A lot of people are registering themselves as freelancers.
Correct.
And a lot of people, I mean, that's not data that's captured, but you should read through these reports, which will tell you that India is on a cusp of evolution, will change. Yes, provided we have politically stable neighbors. We need to have politically stable states. We need to drive jobs. Ratan Tata had said that we need to create 150 million jobs by 2030. We should stick to the number. We should run this country efficiently. And yes, of course, have some compassion around healthcare, education. If you look at the UPI, which is what we don't even take change anymore. I've not seen a bank for the longest of time.
I don't have cash.
So isn't that? I'm saying it's a tool, right? It's the best form of public-private participation that I see today, right? I mean, yes, of course, India has a lot of the Western nations give India a lot of slack. But from what I don't have to go to Dubai or Singapore to get things. Everything is here.
Now,
right?
I agree with everything you've said. Right? I know that India is in a position where it's going to grow. Right? That's not just me saying. That's the experts saying. That's the institutions that are supposed to capture all of the data are actually saying. Right? But my question still remains that the gap between the poor and the rich is still increasing.
Do you want to believe that? Yes, you can. India has to manage its farm income and obviously farm income is not taxed, but yes, India has to go through some form of reform in the farming side. The current government has tried it and then has gone back on it, right? I come from a family of farmers and business people. So are there poor people? Yes, there are a phenomenal number of poor people. I gave you the reasons. I mean, we have suffered over the last 300 years. So the last 70 years, the Indian state is going from a socialist economy to a pro-capitalistic economy. And when we do that, we'll have our own, like McDonald's has its own flavors in India, we will have our own flavors. Every foreign company will have its own flavor in India, right? But what is sad, if you think of India is more on the consumption track, that scares me more than poverty. I think we'll beat poverty. I think we need to get to the fact that can we build Microsofts of the world or the Oracles of the world? Oracle's okay. I'm not a fan, but all of these large companies from America, Apple and things like that.
I think we are getting there, don't you think?
Not yet. Not yet, but there are great names. I mean, you mentioned Zerodha and Zoho, but Zoho is still. I mean, I think it's still American, but now obviously Sridhar's moved to India and he's doing things in India. Great for him, and he wants India to be what we are discussing, what you're discussing. In fact, you want to go meet him in Tamil Nadu in the village where he is, because he seems to be changing. He wants to talk about the same thing. How do you get India go from being a farm economy to some form of economy that's great at IP in terms of technology? It takes time.
Of course,
it takes time. I thought about it like this when I was 20 in 2001. Pardon, but I generally realized that to move mountains takes time, and we all have to contribute to that system and influence that system to change. It will change. You see, all the rich people from the 108 unicorns will create new pressure groups. They will go tell the government to change. And if we go to 200 unicorns or more, I'm sure that there'll be a new class of people emerging who will push the government to change things. Push not just the government. Why do we always have to blame the government? That's another thing, okay? We've been all taught that the government is the most uncontrollable thing. It is the Leviathan. And by the way, they should also read the book Leviathan by Hobbes. Okay, so the point is, corporate and state government should work together. See, if that happens, and that is happening, but yes, to a point, are we becoming a state that is decaying because there's enough enough of the oligarchs, influencing government to take off resources. That is scary. Like, can we become another banana republic like all those Latin American states? That I think people of this country are far more intellectual. There's a great constitution. There's a great judiciary. The fourth estate is making a comeback.
Correct.
It will all be fine according to me. And I want to be optimistic because I have children. My children are here. I don't want to live in a place
also
where I'm
children.
persecuted. You're not a child. I'm a child then. Right.
Okay. So last question before we move forward.
Yes, please.
What are your thoughts on the 2024 election?
2024 elections? Okay. I think it's going to be Mr. Modi's swan song. I hope he finds a successor. I really hope he does. Then, I mean, I'm not going to comment on his party or anything in this show, but generally, I think India has changed over the last 8 years. It's a lot of narrative, of course. There's a lot of work done also. You have to realize there's UPI, GST implementation that's happened.
No, I mean...
There's several other things. But yes, there was a lot of narrative also. There were a lot of mistakes made too. But he set the precedence for narratives for every other prime minister to follow. It could be from any party.
Correct.
They will be digitally savvy. They will say the things that they want to say and then tell the electorate to do this and that. Yes, but if you cut the clutter, we have had stable governments from 1998. That's more important to me, regardless of who wins.
Right.
That's it.
Got it. I think I need to put this out there that the government has done a really good job in terms of building India for the future, right? Putting people in the right spots to really grow and do things, putting India on the map for the world to see, right? And if the projections are right, then
I think the narratives were well set. Let me put it that way. The narratives were good enough to put us in the world stage, and it's people like you can go abroad, rather than say that they've done a good thing.
Now, I want to talk about another really, I wouldn't say controversial, but they have been in the news quite a bit.
Okay.
Which is Coup. You've worked with Coup.
Yeah, I did.
What is Coup like? When did you work with Coup? Tell us your journey
last
with
year, 2021.
And they started in 2020. They started in 2020.
They were around before that also, but as in a different name.
Different name, right? 2020, during the whole Twitter war, is when they came in and sort of scooped the
I think
market.
They've done well with Twitter's problems. I think with what Apramaya has done, and Mayank, of course. They've gone and captured a niche market. You need to have an alternative to Twitter. And that's what they've done very well. They've actually captured on the narrative well.
Okay.
Again, I use the word narrative. So yes, they've done well.
What do you mean by narrative?
That's the narrative, right? That Twitter is not the place to be. The place to be is cool.
It's the story that is built around things.
Yeah, and it's true. These guys allow you to write in English and say things in several other languages. And yeah, they've
What
seemed
did
to
you
have.
do at Coup?
At Coup, I was supposed to work with authors. I was supposed to work with startups. Some unicorn founders. At the time, it was harder because a lot of the unicorn founders were yet to. They were happy to get their companies on board, but they were because at the time they were only doing 10 million downloads. Now they've crossed 60 or 70.
Yeah.
I think people should look at them as
expanded into different countries.
Yeah. They have gone into Brazil. They've gone into.
They've taken over Nigeria.
They're already, I think they're absolutely they're already there. So they're doing some fantastic things. They have a fantastic PR machinery too to manage the narrative. So I believe that there has to be an alternative to a single app if Twitter says they're everything in the world, it is dangerous. It's always good to have a alternate view. And that's what Coup believes it offers on the table. But I have to say something about the public sphere. It's very important for me because I studied these subjects. And, the public sphere was about using platforms. Mr. Habermas, who's still alive, is a German writer, theorist, who's still around. He's about 90 years old, and he wrote something called the public sphere, where the public sphere is used for public good, where citizens use platforms to go tell politicians or governments to set the agenda. But what's happening today is it's the other way around. In fact, back in 2001, 2, 3, this was all the discussion that we had in university, right? That politicians will go to platforms where they can spread their legitimacy or create their legitimacy on platforms. And they will do anything to push that legitimacy forward. Unfortunately, while platforms claim to be representing citizens, I still think a good chunk of the power rests with the politicians because they love narrative and they'll do anything to get their narrative right.
Keeping coup aside, what is your idea? I mean, you have some insights on this, I'm guessing. What is a political involvement in a business's success?
Yeah, a lot of businesses do tie up with politicians, right? And you see it. It's true.
And these are not, there's not public information, right? I don't think it's all put out in public.
It is. A lot of it is in public. I mean, come on. We all know the companies that are close to the parties. Everybody is. Whether you like it or not, people will knock on your doors if you're successful. And again, we are saying the government is bad. Look at the other alternative. We could also go to the government and influence them.
Correct. It just
right?
depends on what approach you want to take.
It is true. So they will knock on our doors for their, electioneering and, funds and all that. But we also do take favors. Let me tell you, you should read Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations. In that, Adam Smith clearly says how businessmen can actually change the course of decision making by influencing, monarchs. They can influence anybody that they want. Okay, but we never asked that question, do we? Right? That's why I see I'm a pro-capitalist, but I've also seen that's the reason why Marx put out the Communist Manifesto. It was a very important critique. He put it out to clearly talk about the problems of the joint stock company. It's not about money. It's about how certain individuals will do anything to live in power.
Right.
And that's why he said, why not a technical society? Why not everybody who's technical get together and run society?
Right.
But unfortunately for him, his revolution happened in Russia, which was a peasant economy back then, monarchy.
Got it.
With huge number of peasants. So that's why it's funny how Marxist theory, obviously it's now debased and all that, but it's good to use as critique. In fact, Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations and the Communist Manifesto are good critiques on whatever's happening today in India.
Don't you think these books that you've dropped at least like 5 books?
Yeah,
till now.
6 books till now.
Don't you think these are too old to capture what's happening now?
The technical society will be so superior that they'll crush everybody else, or
Right.
they'll just manage whatever the population is in 2050, this 10 million people will have these implants all over their body and they'll be like more like androids and they'll be so technically superior that they will manage the rest of the world like, they'll be paid to sit and do some meaningless, menial jobs kind of
Elon
thing.
Elon Musk is working
right?
towards that. No?
You think so?
He's working on Neuralink.
Oh, yeah.
No,
I've
so
not read
you know
about
what?
that.
Interestingly, right before you came, we shot a video for our Instagram page, which was basically about how rats are being controlled for intelligence now. So they're
But
putting...
they experiment with rats all the time.
Yeah, they do experiments, but now it's a reality. DRDO has basically come up with cyborg rats where they
Go to war.
they implant a chip in their brain which lets them control the rat, and the rat has a camera on its back so that it can gather intelligence. So like a situation like a 2611, when it happens, when humans can't get in, these rats will be the one gathering intelligence.
You talk about these human bombers. People use people like sheep, man. Why need rats? Think about it. We're still living in that kind of a world.
That there's still human
sheep
rights.
People, and people call them sheep, flock, whatever. Some of
there's
these
still
religions.
human rights, Vishal.
Yeah, but like I said, human rights is human rights. I mean, I respect whatever you
of
said.
course.
I mean, I'm of the same opinion as you. But if they can use rats, they will implant that on humans, right? That's the
correct.
next logical step.
Yeah.
Correct, and it's already happening. Yesterday, I saw some kind of video on a British website where you throw garbage on the street. The cameras capture the number plate and the garbage coming out of the car, right? And they send a bill saying you have loitered.
Interesting.
Yeah. Oh, pardon me. You have littered, not loitered. You have littered. You have littered in this region, and you need to pay a fine. That's also good, right?
Interesting, yeah.
That is, it can be Big Brother, but still good.
Yeah.
So again, society, evolution, you have to look at it now. After all that reading and traveling, I've realized you've got to look at it from a different lens. I can't be subjective anymore. And that's why with whatever I've told you with my experience, which is again subjective.
Yeah.
But you got to read, you got to research. And that's something that's bottom line to me.
And that's the core we live at with in
Barely
Barely
opinionated.
Opinionated also.
Yes, you're going to let different opinions blossom.
Exactly.
And
you need to take different opinions and perspectives to really understand a situation. You can't just
I
stick
agree.
to one opinion. Like don't just listen to me or him and form your opinion based on it. Listen to more people talk about the same thing.
Yeah, I think you're right. Again, I love Frank Zappa. And Frank Zappa, apart from being a consummate musician, he would say two things, right? If you don't just listen to one news, just don't watch one TV channel. Watch several and then figure out the patterns, and then you'll see what the truth could possibly be. He also said that the most common element in the world is not carbon or hydrogen. You know what it is?
What?
It's stupidity.
Wow. Okay. I
There's
was
so
not
much of that.
expecting that.
There's so much of that in the world.
Yeah. Of course.
There's a lot of
Phil,
that. And you're right. You need to put different opinions out there. By the way, I also have to put this out. One day, I mean, I'm being me all the time, and suddenly somebody ran a story on YourStory, and they had my name written on it, saying that this business model was this, and this editor has helped this business model, and it's so not right. Then I click on that story. Did I really write it? It was not me. Somebody else had written it.
But your name was still there.
Yeah, my name was there, gave me some kind of publicity and all that nonsense, and there was a team gathering. But I would say people generally don't read. And yes, you need to look at different angles before you even judge somebody.
Correct.
But within those judgments, before those, not judgment, before you make up your mind, there's so much narrative around.
Yeah.
That's the problem with current day life. There's so much information.
And
you would not know what to believe.
And things are so complicated because you don't know what is leading to someone's narrative, or what is the reality here, right?
Yeah, man. That's scary. Think
it's-
about it.
Let's talk about more of the startup world.
Please, let's go. Favorite subject for both of us.
What do you think about what's going on with Mama Earth right now? Do you know what
Oh, yeah. I use their products because I have 2 kids at home, babies. I mean, so my daughter's 3, almost 3, and my baby is only 20 years. My boy is 20 days old. So what do I think of the business? I think, again, everybody who's going in IPO, super valuations, they've got a nice valuation, they have a nice narrative going. But we know what happened to the food delivery app. I think such high valuations in the old days, we'd look at cash in hand and, how cash from operations, right? But nobody looks at those numbers, especially for startups anymore. Let me finish. Why? So the valuation looks very high at this point of time. Again, by the way, they're listing, so we can't be commenting. So we should make it very clear that, boss, it's your opinion. You want to buy the stock, please go buy.
There's not
a stocks program, ladies
Yes.
and gentlemen. This is just 2 people just enjoying
Chatting
life
and
here,
talking, yeah.
chatting. And so about, again, great D2C business. So the way they built it, again, after 2015, who would have thought? You wouldn't believe it. In 2015, I was telling a friend of mine, saying, name 10 Indian brands that you can count on your fingers. And we could only count 3 or 4. But now they're more than 100 or 600 or something of that sort.
Yeah.
And they've all done well. So on that basis alone, they're great. But will they be sustainable businesses? It's for time to tell. And yes, there was this news piece out yesterday. Interestingly, you asked me about Mama Earth. They said they're doing it because they could not raise any funds. That's interesting, isn't it? I mean, that was out in the morning context, I think. It's really interesting that people are putting out stuff in their perspective. My opinion about them as a user, as a person who's tracked D2C, in 2015, there were few brands. Now there are 600 brands. Some of them have done really well, like Mama Earth and others. There are several others. I think they need all our support. But if they're going in for listing, I think, again, back there, you said, you alluded to the media question, right? Will advertisers run us? Do you think the VCs are telling them to do this? Do you think that's happening? Think about it. Because they want to exit. Who knows? Who knows? Dude?
That's one of the sort of narratives out there.
Yeah.
My question here is, why is Sebi is the regulator?
Yeah.
If the valuation, as everyone is talking about, is very high, as the numbers show, why is the Sebi even allowing it to happen?
Why not? Good valuation, good money. No, it comes in.
But
people buy.
Sebi is supposed to look after the retail investors, not the businesses.
Again, it protects you against financial fraud and all that. But again, stocks are, you have that rider, no?
Yeah.
It's your own personal risk. You have to evaluate it yourself.
Interesting.
So that's that. It's simple.
Hmm.
It is true. There is a regulator, which also tells you that India is progressive. We have a regulator.
What are your thoughts on the edtech sector right now? I won't name the companies.
You
but
can.
I
It's your
can,
show.
you
You can.
can't.
I
Okay,
can't.
cool.
I can't take opinions on them because
okay.
I know all of them.
Got it.
You know, and the funny part is, I think edtech. I was just looking at. Let's look at commerce as a stream. See. I mean, there's a company called Finverse that I'm associated with. Okay, they're just doing commerce. Let's look at each of these companies and what they wanted to solve, and then let people who are commenting make up their own mind.
Got it.
Let's start with the Decacon.
Got it.
Is it Byju's?
Yes.
Is that the correct? Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah. of
Okay,
course.
we talk Byju's. Okay. See, I know people who funded the company did phenomenally well for the valuations that happened. In fact, they've had bad press over the last 3 years, couple of years, and not good for them. That's the wrong part, right?
Apart from bad press, now
But-
they're in regulatory concern.
Yeah, yes, they are but they've been warned. That's it. I don't think any action's been taken. I don't know any further news. But was edtech necessary for India? Of course.
Of course.
Is there a blended ecosystem, physical versus digital? Yes, there was both. So again, they're just evolving. He went from a tuition teacher to whatever he is now.
Yeah.
No, it's phenomenal. And his wife and he are really running something that has made many Indians proud about the valuation aspect, at least, because Indians love a good story.
Yeah.
But we also take that model stance of, okay, when they're going down, we don't support them, right? I think let's be a bit more balanced here. They built a valuable company. Now we have to make it a valuable business. And I think we should give them time. Don't you think so? I think we should give them time. I mean, we talked about...
Honestly, I would say that we as a public
Yeah.
don't have any say in what they do. I mean, their investors do,
Yeah.
the stakeholders
Yeah.
do. We as public are just like,
Yeah.
we are
just
there's
being
a movie
sold.
going on and
We're
we are
just being
watching.
sold. We're just being sold. And it's entertainment.
Yeah.
And we're watching that
We are
entertainment,
watching,
right?
We are enjoying and we are learning.
I still think... Let's look at the macro numbers of edtech, man. 250 million students in India. 12 million graduates or more, 15 million. And we are talking about only about... I mean, 80% of them are not employable in the higher education spectrum. You know, we're just talking about just in the secondary education, right? K-12.
Correct.
Right? I mean, if somebody has to if you lay the foundation there for basic understanding math, science, history, don't forget your history, ladies and gentlemen, please, and teach your children to comprehend, for God's sake, right? And don't look at history as dates and people murdering each other. There's much more to it than that. Set the context and you prepare a society towards getting employable. You know, you again, whole data. India is we talk about if we could do UPI, we can do data on education too. And again, this evolution, if it starts now, I think we'll be only ready by 2050 if we decide to change. In fact, let me even take another example, completely digressing. Did you know the Thames was the dirtiest river? There's a song called Waterloo Sunset, okay? In that Ray Davies writes, okay, dirty old river. He sings about it as dirty old river. So that damn river was so dirty in the 1850s. They called it the Great Stink of 1850s or something. Suddenly, the whole bureaucracy wakes up and politicians wake up and say they have to change. Everybody had to change. And they cleaned it up. Look at the way things are now. It's taken a good 100 years to get to what they wanted.
Right.
Same thing with companies and us. It takes time. But because we are so short-term focused, all of us,
Yeah.
I think you were right. We have so many other stakeholders to answer that the end objective is just a narrative.
And another interesting thing to add here is that have you seen the show Pictures? Have you heard of Pictures?
Yeah, on Z, right?
Z, yeah.
I don't watch any of that nonsense.
So-
I'm sorry to say, I know people love it. I don't watch it. It doesn't.
Of course.
It's not my fancy. I have lots of other better things to do.
There
in
is a
life.
saying, different strokes for different folks.
Yeah,
Everyone
it's
has their
just that.
own- Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. So in that show, but that show is like basically
It's in Hindi, right?
It's in
I'd
Hindi.
perhaps watch it in Telugu, ladies and gentlemen. I want it in Telugu.
So that show is all about building a startup, right? And in that, the second season which came out, there is a saying which is basically that your work doesn't control your story. Your valuation is what people want to talk about, right? And startups at this point, in real life also are just running behind valuations and valuations, just so people think people have a good reputation of them. People don't care about profits. They're not even looking at those numbers. They want to know, is your company a $1 million, forget million at this point, is your company a $1 billion company or not?
Narrative apart, there's a bit of reality that we have to show in EdTech. There are some good unicorns out there. India, again, not one or two companies can change the whole, solving problems for India. It's like I said, there's a vast distribution. 250 million students spread across villages, towns, panchayats. You have taluk level schools. You have different types of schools. To get digital as an impact to this needs a concentrated effort. That means a little more understanding of the distribution and the target ecosystem. But it's not always spray and pray, because the Decacon that we spoke about apparently sold to a lot of auto drivers, a lot of poor income families.
Correct.
And then the founders had to go apologize. Apparently, allegedly. Again, I'm saying that because I read that in the news. That shouldn't have happened.
Correct.
But again, in this evolution,
it's just the ethical dilemma here for them. They're trying to build a business, but then they're messing up with their audience and their customers.
If you look at it in 1920s, when in the US especially, there were a lot of car companies. There was a lot of narrative. Everything agglomerated to one company called General Motors.
Okay.
And it was General Motors versus Ford.
Correct.
And a few Japanese came in and disrupted later, 40 years later. So it is a process of time where we should be aware, as at least media people, that this is just the beginning of something. But yes, are they taking retail investors for a ride? You should take a look at that for sure if they're listing. But the VCs will set the narrative. There's a lot of leaks that go on. Maybe the VC is unhappy that the way these guys are doing. So there's a lot of leaks by lawyers, VCs. Everything goes. It's not just employees. People think it's an employee that's leaked. It could also be the others within their ecosystem. It usually comes from the top, right? So who knows, man, where it'll go. But definitely India, your main problem of poverty that you just alluded to in the beginning is also combined with 250 million students at this point of time. And how many of them pass 10th standard, or how many of them pass 12th? That is something. And how many of them will be employable? You have to talk to some of these blue collar companies. I don't recollect their names. I think you have to bring them on the show to ask, how is India solving the problem of making blue collar workers white collar workers? Or if there's a lot of blue collar workers, what type of jobs are they doing? Again, EdTech in the middle of all this. Is EdTech supposed to reskill? So many opportunities. So BCom, I forgot. I was consulting with this firm. There are 6 million BCom students every year.
Wow. Okay.
And only, at any given point of time today in India, there are 8 million BCom students. And 2 million BCom grads every year. In that 2 million, 1.2 million kids go unemployed. That's a high number. 60% or 70% are not employable, man.
Correct.
And I ran this story in 2006 or 7. We ran the story called Educated But Not Employable, only looking at the engineering stream, when 90% of the engineers were not employable. It's phenomenal how we are where we are as a country today. I think the startups have created jobs. Startups are the only ones who will create jobs. It's not the large companies. And if capital inflows stop, then it's a problem.
Correct.
There have been massive job layoffs this year. When I say this year, it's the financial year.
It's the financial year, yeah.
There's so many job layoffs, and that's scary. I don't know, sometimes going back to your socialist roots, like all your questions were that, do we have to lay off people? Do we have to employ so many people and lay them off?
There's one thing that I read which made a lot of sense to me, which was that Indians don't like to pay for things.
Yeah.
Right? Indians would rather sell their data than pay for things without and most of Indians don't maybe don't even realize that they're selling their data, right? I'm sure you have a lot to add on that as well, and that's how all of these content platforms also work. They're running it for free, but
all
they
of
are
us
selling.
press yes. The moment we sign in, we say yes to everything.
So what's your when you work with these startups and when we have worked with these startups, what does data play?
This is not new, I mean, this has always been done. For example, in the beginning of time, we outsourced all the hard work to the village chiefs. We've said yes to the guy. right? Then we said yes to the emperor.
Right.
Then we said yes to the knights. Then we said yes to whatever. I mean, we said yes to the state. This is what we are, right? The governments. The government, nothing but maintain sovereignty in a given territory, maintain certain, we have some exclusive rights, right? And we have outsourced the protection to them. We've outsourced our data to the startups
Okay.
to do anything they want. But do we know what but at least the state puts in good roads, toilets. What do I get from a startup?
Startups, yeah. No,
I
but
get nothing. Coupons?
so tell me, do they
Lunch coupons, maybe?
again, straightforward answer, are startups selling data? Not, I mean, they are
See, India does not have a data law as of now. We need it.
correct.
And I don't know what's happening because I get a lot of shitty crap suddenly on my mail. I don't know who's selling my data. All sorts of banks, all sorts of, then I get all sorts of, stuff that I don't need.
Yeah, and recently I've been getting a lot of these junk calls also for
Yeah,
some reason.
I get at least, the reason I don't pick up my calls is on silent is because, and a lot of you PR people out there who complain that I don't pick up calls is because I get so many junk calls. I get thousands of junk calls.
Shit.
I say, I use a D&D option also. I mean, there is this option that I
Yeah.
don't want these services. But I don't think they care very much. So it is true. There's data going out all over the place. And I don't get anything in return if these companies are making money. I think there should be something out there. I think there should be a global movement for that.
There is Web3 that is trying to solve that, right? Now,
there?
Like, so there's this browser called Brave, right? Yeah. Brave, which basically pays you to watch ads on their
a lot of the games, right?
browser.
I've played a lot of games today that allow you to watch ads to earn some
coins.
Some coins.
But in
or
this case,
guns or whatever.
this browser is giving you real life money. So you can basically, once you collect like a $25, right?
I think that's a good way to go about it. If people are compensated, it's great. Right? I mean, but it's strange, no? We don't get compensated.
Have you dealt with any Web3 startups yet?
Everybody claims to be Web3 now, man.
It's just the key word now.
Yeah, it moved from
it was website.
It moved from cloud to big data to machine learning to AI to blockchain to private and public blockchains. Smart. Then what? The crypto coins, right? And then there's crypto trading, and then what else now? You talk about Web3.
Web3.
Now it's Chat GPT.
AI, ML.
It's that now.
Yeah.
It's a different word for AI now.
First of all, have you dwelled in this industry, in the new AI, tech, Web3, blockchain industry?
Yeah. I have been following it. I have been attending conferences about it. Before this Chat GPT thing. In 2016-17, when AWS or Amazon Web Services, they were already talking about an AI that could write press releases as good as a journalist or as good as a PR professional. And it's finally come to that. It's interesting, right?
Yeah, that's very interesting.
So I saw the early otter.ai, the thing that transcribes for you. And then now it looks like you can add an element of Chat GPT. It becomes whatever it has to.
Now the use case of Chat GPT is Microsoft is really going to take it off, right? So what they're doing is they're trying to combine Bing, which is
their search.
Yeah, which is I would say a failed search engine, and Chat GPT, which both of them together are, I think, going to be an explosive, competitor to Google. What do you think?
I think I wrote a story about it, in 2017. I wrote about, how these chatbots were cropping up, and I call them the Blade Runner of today. You've seen the movie Blade Runner?
Yeah.
Okay, Blade Runner 2049 you've seen the original?
No, I've seen the old one.
Yeah, the older one.
Yeah,
Harrison Ford's, right? Yeah. So I said we are living in that era suddenly where I said for example, I had an Android phone where I had installed a Google chatbot and had installed Alexa.
Okay.
So you believe it or not, at that point of time, because both these softwares I started trying to use both the bots at the same time. It really did crash my phone. Okay, and I had to use one of the bots to actually override the other.
Wow. Okay.
And I won't name it because I don't want to give credence to that company yet. Okay, it was so interesting. This is early experimentations.
When is this?
17.
Okay.
And I'll send you that article after. You will really love it. I start off with this thing that, AI is just the flirty voice in the other corner telling you what to do, something of that sort.
Okay.
If I remember the introduction correctly. But it does start off with this flirty voice introduction.
Right.
I'll send it to you. So it's amazing how things have gotten so far. Why is the Uber driver, for example, only following the route that he's been asked to follow? Because it's the AI telling him to follow it. He'd rather trust the machine more than you.
Correct.
So I'm saying in this case, the battle between, the different AIs of different companies is really, hot up or heat up, and it's going to be amazing. It's going to be amazing. Ooh, you want to pick a winner? Somebody will go buy their stock, right?
So Microsoft is already an investor in Bing. I'm sorry, in ChatGPT, right? OpenAI, which is the company that's building ChatGPT. And I feel like once they are integrated, I don't think they'll be able to take over Google, of course, because I'm sure Google again has the money, has all the resources.
Microsoft will probably do it in the office side.
Correct.
Make the office work easier.
Correct.
They've completed this whole 360 at
The
work,
whole
right?
ecosystem.
Yeah, which Google has not been able to do.
Correct.
Neither has Amazon, right? So Amazon's got the back end infrastructure done very well. So each one's got a space, right? If you notice, Google's got the consumer. These guys have the back end infrastructure sorted, and these guys have the office ecosystem.
Do you think all of
Microsoft.
them are sort of coordinating and like, okay, you take this,
I
I'll
think
take
they're
this?
forming a cartel, some kind of syndication. Like
I don't
that,
know. I want to know. You should know. You're the behind the business guy.
In fact, there were cases that if you read in the US, you see cartelization being fined by regulators in the US, especially in the automotive world. It has happened. It is happening in the tech world too.
Okay.
So yes, if you pull out case studies, there are plenty, and our government should be cognizant of it. And we are today only protecting consumers and consumer forums. But yes, we should stop this cartelization if there is such a thing. And they can be. Why not? We already let two big families cartelize India. You know what I'm talking about. Ports and oil and natural gas and all that.
I was literally I was just thinking about that, and I'm going to get to it now.
Go on.
What do you think of the cartelization by the
I told you
families?
We are in the world of oligarchy and patronage and clientelism. Our evolution is such in the political side of things, right? I think it's true. I think there's a book called Polyester Prince, which all of them, if they get a copy of it, please read the Polyester Prince. Okay. I think it's by a foreign journalist who I think he's Australian, if I'm not mistaken. I forget his name. I think the book is a very good history on the Ambani family.
Right.
But there is this conspiracy that book is no longer available because they don't want that to be published. But it's available on the Mumbai streets. These hawkers sell these off publishing world books. It's almost like a pirated version of that book, which is still floating around. I wish the journalist, the writer who wrote that book, made so much more money because the book still sells. Okay, I have a copy.
If it's there on Amazon, I'm going to link it here. Go check it out.
Let's ask your team to check it out now and tell us, right? But let's ask people below. Have you read the Polyester Prince? I don't know. Have you?
No. I haven't even heard of it. Check if it's there or not. These two families, right? Or I would say individuals as of now, Ambani, Adani. Right, both of them have really done a lot for the country in terms of developing and making sure that things are good, right? Of course, for their selfish needs, but it's good or is it bad? What do you think?
They're business. They should do what they have all the. Anybody wants to be in their situation of power, but you have to look at the way they've built it, right? The new data for Reliance is they clearly say it's not oil, it's data.
It's geo.
It's not oil, but it's data. It is geo. Same thing, right? You have control over the resources, raw materials, and then you have control over data, which is again a raw material. So anything is possible from there. Therefore, you see Adani also doing moves in media now.
Right.
Strange.
Correct.
Great patterns.
Correct. So and I feel like that pattern is now Bezos has Wall Street. Elon Musk recently acquired Twitter.
Bezos has not Wall Street. He has the Washington Post.
Washington Post. I'm sorry. Washington Post. You have Bloomberg is already owned by a billionaire, right? You have
the Star Group.
Star Group. Yeah. Elon Musk.
Bloomberg, I don't know who owns it now, so I don't know.
I forgot his name. Elon Musk now acquired Twitter, and Adani now acquired NDTV. Ambani already has Network 18. Right? What is it?
Geo.
And Geo, of course, right? What is it with billionaires trying to acquire me? You're from media background. What is it about the media background that really
reinforce beliefs?
Narratives.
I've gone back to that. They will say your editorial is as free as everything can be. But that era is gone. I have no who are independent editors and editors who took their own decisions. I don't see anybody now except a couple of them. I've mentioned their names already. But yeah, it's narrative, no? It's narrative. You have to play the game.
Right.
Everything sounds like a press release now. If
Correct.
you read news,
Correct.
right? The analysis of it is lacking.
Correct. If it's negative, it's from the competitive business. If it's good, then it's from the business.
Yeah, it's very strange you say that. Today I can't tell the difference between an analysis and what's happening in the PR activity. I can't tell. It's really managed very well today, strangely.
Our
The book is not available on Amazon, neither it's on Flipkart. Google, you can do it.
okay.
You can do Google. You can do a Google read on that.
Yeah.
There you go.
Oh, interesting.
That's a book that people should read.
Okay. Let's see how we can source that book.
And it'll also show us by talking about this, are we really free India? Somebody writes to us saying, you got to cut this thing out,
These guys have their businesses, have the media in control, right? You have worked in the media industry. You understand PR, right? What is
No, media and PR are two different things, Rohit.
PR relies on media. Media relies on PR.
I disagree. I think PR wants to influence media.
Sorry?
They don't rely on each other.
No, so PR wants to influence media. They don't have any other way to sort of build.
It's their mandate
Correct.
to get the spin. They have to set the agenda
Correct.
somewhere. And they set the public agenda through us
And
by influencing us.
and media needs PR because media needs money.
Media needs corporate, not PR.
But isn't
But if you're
corporate the one giving
but it's
PR?
not- if you're nice to PR, it doesn't mean it'll result in money. Then you're a shit journalist because I'm saying not you.
Yeah.
And not anybody because it doesn't result in money. Somebody has to go sell the concepts to the corporate marketing guy or the business guy to get it.
Got it.
PR only reinforces a story, and if it makes sense to a journalist, and he or she has to do a massive due diligence before they even work with a brand or a corporate to tell their story.
Got it. Okay.
But
Cool.
yes, sometimes people are anti-PR and they'll just write anything they want. That's also wrong.
Got it. So working in this media industry, what is the sort of money like? What is the sort of money that businesses or corporates are shelling out on media companies? What is the sort of money that PR agencies are shelling on media houses?
Okay, that's a great question. Let me tell you, the PR folks there don't pay journalists. That's a myth. But money gets paid somewhere else. Yes, they may be.
I'm not saying journalists are making money. I'm saying
Oh no, there are people making money.
Okay.
Let me put it out there.
Okay.
There are people making money. The way they do it, they're wheeler dealers and they have their way of doing it.
Got
Okay. And I'm literally come and look at the Delhi circle. What are they doing? Influencing. I mean, not all of them, but I don't want to talk names because you need to then talk about who's done it, why they've done it,
Correct.
where did you get your info? I don't want to talk about that. Like a good apple and a bad apple, the good apples and bad apples. The few bad apples, they exist everywhere, and they do it. And why do they do it? They want power, wealth, whatever. It's not as if, and very few journalists make money, mind you. It's a tough profession.
again,
to
I'm
be in.
guessing there is a top half. Top 1%,
Top.
5%.
I mean, I could tell you that if, the average editor's salary could be anything over 2.5 lakhs. The next, so your junior would be making around 15 to 20,000 kind of thing, and you don't unless you get to the top 1% of editors, you don't really make money.
Got it.
And now getting to your point of people owning media companies, they will bring in the kind of people who will reinforce their beliefs, which is natural, no? Like the large companies owning media.
Right.
So PR shelling out money. There's a lot more money going into marketing and branding and less on PR actually.
Okay.
Let me be honest with you. PR has no power in India. There is something called lobbying and public affairs. There's a lot of money going there. But general PR, zero money. It's unfortunate because there's no scope for storytelling there. But there is because in India, corporates are not able to tell the difference between PR and marketing. They'll bucket PR under marketing.
Correct.
But marketing budgets, lobbying budgets are very high. It's like anywhere in the world. It's more in America and anywhere else in
It's
Europe.
easier to, there is a whole lobbying system in America
Yeah.
than in India, right? There's a full
Very
structured
organized
system.
structure.
Yeah.
But that's why you need to have, I think, in all fairness, some reporters do cover a lot of facts, not
Correct.
some, plenty of them.
Plenty, yeah.
And that's why I subscribe to a few.
Correct.
And things that reinforce what I believe in,
Hmm.
right? And again, is that a bubble?
Hmm.
That's why I subscribe to 5, 6,
Hmm.
so that I have different perspectives.
Got it.
But the funny part is, I'm afraid that all of them talk the same. It's always a Western narrative. But that's where. But I don't read Indian news to be aware of Indianness. I study my own culture by traveling, visiting my own people.
Got it.
Right? I don't even trust our news sometimes. But I do look at our Western news, and it gives me a very different view on India, very sometimes a dismal view, but doesn't matter. I still like the balance of knowing my culture and their economic and their need to influence India, because we're the largest consumer nation in the world. So that way I'm able to balance things. But the interesting aspect of PR for you, it's not really great in India. Same you could say about journalism today. It's really not great, apart from a couple of organizations or few organizations out there.
Got it.
Vernacular, really, man, terrible. I feel sad for them. They don't have like you said, where is the divide? Why is there so much divide between that 5% and the rest? It's because vernacular is not doing a good job of bridging the two. They will say business is all bad. For them, it's like the Diwar movie. They think all businessmen are corrupt. Not all are corrupt. Come on.
Correct.
Not all of them are corrupt, right?
And
it's the truth.
You know what? Social media has done a lot for that, because now, at least around the creator economy, which I'm very much associated with, brands and people in this industry are looking towards creators that are creating content in vernacular languages, because
brands are doing it, but are media people doing it?
You
should be doing it. I'm glad you put out something in Hindi. I was very happy.
Correct.
Because that made sense, right? Till then, you're done stuff in English.
Yeah.
I think that's what you're doing. You're making snackable content in local languages too.
Correct.
That's phenomenal.
Now the thing is
and you're talking business, which is even more interesting, and politics, which is a good combination.
So the thing is, Hindi again, I would say, is like it's been captured a lot, right?
Quite a lot, because it's the largest population.
It's the largest I'm talking about the more niche down languages, right? Like for example, South Indian languages, anything like Marathi,
and look at it, Bengali is still more 100 million, I think. Telugu, Tamil more than 75 million. I mean, Kannada is 40 million.
Now,
these are countries by itself.
And
I think the problem is we are so stuck in vernacular. Vernacular is so stuck with politics. I like the fact that you said, these new age, distribution companies like YouTube, maybe Instagram, maybe has allowed people like you or people in the vernacular world to come and talk about news. They make their own news in Kannada or Telugu or Tamil or Marathi.
Not just news, right?
Or
like
Bengali.
When it comes to any sort of content, these vernacular language creators are really blossoming, and
that I agree with.
And
you.
brands are appreciating that. Brands are giving them money because they're able to tap into a new audience altogether, which otherwise they might not have.
That I agree.
Yeah,
I completely agree with you.
Yeah, and I think what's happening is these.
So the news has moved. People want to know about startups. They will go to a Telugu channel or Marathi channel.
Correct.
It is or a Kannada channel.
Correct.
I've seen that happen, and it's the future.
Correct.
Believe me, which a lot of people are missing out there. If all the top editors in the Kannada industry are watching this, or the Telugu industry or Tamil or Marathi, check it out. Move to the startup world. Little bit, no?
Little bit, yeah.
Tell our people that there's this 95% that can come into our world too. And therefore, your income divide and all those answers around whether the poverty gap will be bridged will be answered.
And you know what's interesting, at least in the startup world, so I believe Shark Tank has done a lot for it, right? Shark Tank India. Are you following?
Yeah. I do. Did you know I've covered all those companies?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What are you saying?
I have.
Okay.
I'm be very honest with you. If you go back, I mean, this was not even 2 years ago. Boat is whatever it is today, but I've done Boat when it was just 100 crores. It's huge now. I mean, very approachable people back then, not anymore.
Not anymore. They're too famous now.
They're too famous.
They're too
That's
famous.
good.
But so the statistics from
That's true.
from the previous season.
That's true. They are so famous that we are almost famous. We're not yet there.
They have gone. They are celebrities in their own regard at this point.
Yeah, they're celebrities. I'm glad. See, the branding of it was done well. I mean, okay, I'll give you facts, man. Somebody reached out to me in 2019 and early 19, and said, do you want to do something with Shark Tank India? Let's do something together. And I did speak to the Sony guys, and this is related to your story.
This is in 18 or 19?
18 or 19. I don't
Okay,
remember the
got
dates
it.
exactly. And they sent a message back saying they may not feel that Shark Tank is the right fit for India.
Wow.
But then lo and behold, last year, 2021, it just becomes a phenomenon, and especially because it's curated very well in Hindi.
Brilliant.
And it's really well done. And I'm sure that others will follow suit. But you have to thank YourStory somewhere because that place did a very good job. I mean, you have to thank the entire ecosystem, Mohandas Pai, you have to,
Correct.
Kalari Capital, you have to thank all of them. I mean, obviously Ratan Tata's office. They all funded YourStory, Shraddha, of course. And, for whatever it did to the startup world as a media company. And therefore, whatever it is today is Shark Tank and all of them are, I think, in India. I mean, to set up precedence, right, was done by YourStory. I think I would rather steal that thunder at this point of time.
Is YourStory in vernacular languages?
Yeah.
It is?
It is. It's at least doing well in Tamil and Hindi. I don't know now because I've not been there for 18 months or so. So I have no touch with them anymore. But they've done well.
Right. So what I was talking about is that in the previous season of Shark Tank, if you saw the stats of the startups that were presenting, majority of them were from tier 2, tier 3 cities and hardly any from tier 1. Right. And even this season, a lot of them have come from tier 2, tier 3 cities. Even there's some from the villages as well, right? Especially those that were funded.
Think about it. Kaun Banega Crorepati started around 99, 98, 99, 2000. I forget the year timeline. It's still around 22, 23 years later. Correct? 20, maybe started 99. You don't know.
I think they're 18, 19 seasons or something. I don't know.
Several seasons. So what I'm trying to tell you is, similarly, this will remain for the next 20 years or more. And I'm telling you, India is just going to explode in terms of ideas. It's just that the availability of capital or the fact that somebody can take equity money to build a business is just about getting started. You don't have to feel guilty about, failing anymore.
Correct.
Obviously, Indians had gone through a lot of guilt in the past saying that we failed and we can't do anything else. But there is this whole feeling out there that things have changed so rapidly.
Yeah.
I heard of a Bangalore startup that got funded the other day. It does flowers.
Yes.
Yeah. So
we might have them on the podcast.
You should have them on the podcast, right? So who would have known? Would have known that they would have gone to show. It's great PR, mind you.
Correct.
And the valuation is not their founders. I mean, the guys, the judges, right? Oh, not the judges, the sharks.
Correct.
And their money coming in. It's the PR valuation that's going in.
Exactly.
That's a lot of
Whether
PR.
you get funded or not, you're still getting great PR.
It's a lot of PR.
And there
In fact, I was doing a podcast to the company and they said, can you wait till 14th? We'll be on Shark Tank and then you can release it on that day.
Wow.
It's funny. It's all PR, man.
From season 2, you're saying?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
So
interesting.
It's interesting, right? There's a lot of good buzz. I'm telling you, I think that show has done well, and you have to give YourStory credence for what it's done. And a lot of the magazines also, off late they caught up with it. So they've done a good job. So journalists have done a good job but sometimes too much, man. Startup ecosystem.
Is
too much credence.
YourStory the first publication to start covering startups like they did, or no?
There were many.
Okay.
There were about 8, 9 back in 8.
Okay.
Back in 8, there must have been many. In fact, I have a special story. In 13, I think, 13 or 14. I think in 14, the Flipkart founders hosted a lunch for us at a place in Koramangala. I clearly remember the place. And I ramble a lot. So I was rambling off a few questions when everyone was quiet. And then, Shraddha came in and said, we are building a great platform. Do you want to come meet us? I was going through a crisis at the time. I don't want to get into the crisis. But, I was I was comfortable in the magazine. And I said, look, I was really pleased that somebody even asked me. So I said, at some point of time. Even before that was in 14, but in 11, I had seen Shraddha covering a Snapdeal event where Nexus had invested in them. They had done a Hard Rock Cafe press conference, not a press conference, a get together with Nexus and Nexus Venture Partners and Snapdeal, some kind of small talk. And I remember her. She reminds me of what you're doing now. She was doing everything herself. She had a small team, and then 14 happened. I happened to meet her. thankfully, 10 months later, I said, I mean, the old world of journalism, legacy journalism, I'm not print, was just destroying itself, or shooting itself in the foot because they didn't want to capture what's happening there. And I just wrote a mail. I still remember that mail. I have it. I said, I'm looking for, um, I'm looking for, I clearly used fresh energy. I'm looking for some new energy and I want to go fresh or something like that. I still have that email with me. And I sent it to her. A month later, I got introduced by Mohandas Pai, of course, and his son, Pranav Pai. A month later, I got a message. She called me, in fact, and I was strangely at a funeral. Okay, and I said, I'll call you back in 2 days. And she said, it's fine. And she called me back, and she is the kind of person who would, I'm talking a lot about her because I respect what she did to me. She
Right.
just changed my perspective.
Right.
And she just said, okay, come over. And she met her. She took me to the office. There are 60 people, not 60, I think 30 people waiting for me. 30 people, yeah. 30 people waiting for me. And I had to, because it's a small team back then, and in a house. And I had to give a speech to those 30 people. Never before had I given a speech to 30. I mean, being a legacy journalist, you just had to do a lot of research, and most of the research is libraries, going out, meeting people, and that's it. You would write a story and you'd forgotten.
Correct.
Here was a dynamic world. Every day was new. So I had to go. My job interview was a speech,
Wow. Okay.
right? And that's how. And after that, I mean, the 6.5 years, 7 years there was magical. You know, So you.
What was
your
the speech
question,
about? Why did
the speech was about.
Why
this-
did she ask you to give a speech?
That's
I
how
didn't
she
get it.
is.
Okay.
She says, go talk to my team. Here's
Oh,
my team. And
okay.
everybody looks at you suddenly. And it's fantastic because it just tells you the kind of energy. And that's how she's very intuitive as an individual.
Mm-hmm.
So she picked me on intuition alone because she need not have hired me.
Right.
So it was a fantastic situation to be in. And I talked about how I was not as well read maybe 7 years ago. So I just spoke about what I do for a living. I was running marathons at the time. I clearly remember I talked about that. I talked about how certain businesses were moving to digital transformation. You know, data was big. I talked about how startups and corporates can bridge together in India because that had never happened. And lo and behold, she realized that the potential was to get this guy who knows the corporate world. Let's bridge that gap together and build something together. So it was phenomenal.
Nice. Okay, awesome, Vishal. I think there's a good point to sort of cut down on the conversation.
There's so much to chat.
So much still to chat, but what do you think? How was it?
I think barely opinionated is the new age media, man. I think you have so much that snackable news for kids is going to put them in. I think other media channels should partner with you. Interesting that you put in news pieces that people have, and you have your own opinion on it, of course, and you get guests, of course, to to reinforce those opinions. I think that's the way to go. And I'll tell you what, it takes time to build a business.
Yeah.
And I've seen that with other people. Now I'm finding it out.
You're building
myself.
on your own Upstream Life.
Upstream Life. It's called the upstreamlife.com. Check it out. It's a podcast business.
What do you want to do? What's your vision with Upstream Life?
My vision is to tell corporate to separate editorial from PR and marketing, right? Use content for what it is, right? Rather than put it as a PR thing or a marketing thing.
Right.
Try to build your own community. That's what I'm trying to say, because today's distribution, you don't have to get credence from legacy papers.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
Correct.
I can go into detail personally, but that's what I'm trying to break. And I have my freedom to do my own kind of interviews and invite the people that I want to do. And I want to build it into a company that can probably be a media channel that follows this ethic.
And it's been a year since you've started.
18 months.
6 months.
18 months now.
Right.
It's been a good journey.
What's
man.
been the
It's been a good journey. Very nice till November. Then all my clients defaulted because it's a hard time. Money is tight.
Correct.
Hope to win a few new ones this year. Let's see what happens.
Of
from
course,
there on.
one goes, two come.
You have to keep adding.
You have to keep doing that.
adding. And I've had times with salespeople keep coming and going. So you're the virtual salesman.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Vishal, for doing this for me.
Anytime, and you should do this more often.
Of course.
And next time on my channel.
Of course. Done.
Thanks, Rohit.
Awesome.
See you in a bit, dude. Bye, guys.
Bye.